To you. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So what is a building permit? Anybody care to take a stab in the dark, or does anybody know what a building permit is?
Can I set you up on the mic?
My mic?
Yes.
Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
You want my mic for that?
Yes, please.
For my little Facebook presentation?
Yes, sorry.
Excuse me. Apparently Facebook can't hear me. Why is it buzzing? It's like a pager going off on my side. Is that better?
Perfect.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, good. So what is a building permit? A building permit defined, okay, the definition of a building permit is that basically authorization must be granted by a government or other regulatory body before construction of a new or existing building or portion thereof can legally occur. It's actually a simple definition. What does to permit mean, right? To allow. It's permitted, okay? The permit, yes, is actually a little card and it's a recording and all of that, but it's basically to allow something to be built or changed, right? That's what a building permit looks like on the left side of your screen. In most cities, you'll see something similar to that. It may not always look exactly the same. When is a building permit required?
All the time.
What's that?
All the time?
All the time. I love it. That's a great answer. Yeah, all the time, right? A building permit is basically required to any modification to mechanical, electrical, plumbing, or structural systems. So essentially, think of it this way. Any alteration, repair, upgrade, demolition, anything that you ever do to a structure requires a permit. That includes the water heater that's getting replaced. Yeah, it includes the toilets that are getting replaced. They're supposed to have permits. It's supposed to have permits. Those are all supposed to be permitted. Now, sometimes in the case of a water emergency, like let's say you have a flood in the house and the water heater may be, leaking or something like that, obviously the plumber is allowed to come out and change that water heater out and take care of the immediate threat of potential water damage, but a permit is supposed to be pulled after that occurs. Modifications done without permits. Okay, now there's something that's not often thought about. Permits are required. That's all you have to remember. They're required. So any modification that was done without a permit, it still requires a permit. If that modification was done without that permit, what does it require? A permit. Exactly. It's really simple. A real estate agent should not provide the building permits for their clients. Why? Have you guys ever gotten involved in the whole permit search thing and trying to find them for your client and so forth and so on? Trying to be very helpful, of course, right? Okay, you're familiar with your CAR document, Statewide Buyer Sellers Advisory? You're familiar with that, right? Item number 18 on that document discusses building permit, zoning, and code compliance. It goes into saying that buyer and seller are advised that any structure on the property, including the original structure, any addition, may not be permitted, so forth and so forth. It also basically ends with, if buyer wants further information, broker recommend that buyer discuss the issue with an appropriate professional during buyer's inspection contingency period. Brokers do not have expertise in this area. It's very important, all right? I do a lot of risk management classes, and I do a lot of classes regarding your CAR Statewide Buyer Sellers Advisory. And just to be slightly off topic real quick, you would be surprised to see how that document coincides with the inspection documents, the standards that the inspectors follow, okay, the insurance carriers that the inspectors have, so forth and so on. They really do sort of blend and mesh together. We're in agreement with those items, they're in agreement with our items. So it's important that we recognize the fact that the seller and the buyer are very much an integral and important part of any real estate transaction. It's not just you as brokers or agents are there to just hold their hand and sign their paperwork for them. You're obviously to teach them and show them what they need to do. But be careful when you start doing things that you your agencies are recommending that they do. Okay? It's just a layer of the onion, if you will, for protection. So, obviously, a permit inspection service could be hired. I think one of the most common ones, one of the most well-known, is permitreport.com. The pens are moving. Permitreport.com. And they're basically a company that does a complete permit research and provides a report regarding the permits, when they were pulled, what they were for, if they've been signed off, so forth and so on. It generates a whole report for the actual permit. So, why are building permits needed? I mean, there's portions of the country where people don't pull permits. So, why would you think a building permit is needed? Yes?
Because some modifications may be done that are hazardous or a safety issue.
That's exactly. Building permit, a code is designed to meet a minimum safety standard. As you're saying, safety. Okay, that's why codes are designed. They're designed to meet a minimum safety standard. And that permit is a record that that thing met that minimum standard. Okay, so that's why the permit is needed. The permit is needed so that the construction actually meets those codes. All right? And it meets those minimum safety standards. To ensure construction meets current safety standards. All right? Because obviously, something that's grandfathered in, let's take something simple. A guardrail on a balcony. You know, way back when it was 36 inches, it moved to 38, and now it's at 42. Okay? That, when it was built, was permitted, and is perfectly allowed to remain the way it is. It's not necessary to go pull a permit and change it out to 42 to bring it up to current safety standards. If it was being built today, it wouldn't be built at 38 or 36. It would be built at 42. Okay, so it keeps everything in present time, if you will. Potential safety issues. Let's have some fun with some pictures. What do you guys see here?
Carbon monoxide going in the window.
This gentleman sees carbon monoxide going into the window. That's exactly correct. It's exactly correct. We've got a vent coming off of a gas-fired appliance, water heater, maybe a heating system, and it is too close to that window. That's an openable window. Okay? I don't know if that window's in a bedroom or near a bedroom, but this distance is not far enough, and carbon monoxide can actually move into that room if that window were open. Again, staying with our venting issues, basically we've got a vent from a water heater and a heating system connected together in a fashion that's not allowed. Okay, and there's a hole in the bottom of that vent. So if those two appliances are burning at the same time, those gases are hitting each other, creating a pressure pocket and pushing the gases out of that hole at the bottom of that vent. Obviously, carbon monoxide coming out of that venting system. Now, if this were permitted, a city inspector would have come out and said, no, 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 doesn't pass, sorry, you have to fix it. And he or she will cite that code, hand it to the mechanical contractor or the plumber, and they will have to have it fixed before it actually gets signed off. So here's something that's, if you guys can see this, I don't know if you can see it too clear on this screen. It looks pretty clear on these little TV screens. Thank you so much. All right. I think this is my red light. Yes, it is. Have a look at that top wire connection right there. You see this?
Yeah.
Feel free. What?
Job security.
It's charred. It's melted. Exactly. It's burnt. Okay. This is an electrical. These are electrical wires that are connected together outside of a junction box. There's no safety protection to them, and obviously something is occurring in this electrical system, creating some sort of ground or fault or something wrong with the circuit, and it's generating too much heat inside these wires. You know, all of these wires here are melted and charred. When electricity passes through a wire, it generates heat. All right, if the wire's sized incorrectly or so forth and so on, this is a potential fire hazard, obviously. So this was work performed without a permit. So no one saw this after it was done. What?
Wow.
What is that? What? Now, which came first, the roof or the chimney?
Right.
We don't know.
Oh my
We're not sure, but either way, obviously this would never be approved. You would never be able to pull a permit and, you know, design the system that way and have the city say, okay, that looks good to me. It doesn't work that way. So this is something very common and very simple. This is just a stair rise or a step. I see a lot of heads nodding. Yeah, we see it a lot. And unfortunately, that tread width is not wide enough. There's a certain width and height that they're supposed to be so that when you're walking up or down the stairs, they're not a potential trip or, you know, slip your foot off hazard. So when is something not required to conform to a current code? What's that called? Go ahead, shout it out. Grandfather. That's right. Everybody know what grandfathered basically means, right? So grandfathering is something originally constructed with a permit. It does not have to conform with future changes in codes. As we kind of talked about earlier, that guardrail that was sitting at 38 doesn't have to conform with 42 today, right? We'll probably get into some examples here. All right, so here we go. Here's a beautiful house. In today's codes, what would you guys think would be said about that chimney?
It's too low.
Too low, it's too short, right? There's a particular distance the chimney has to be above the roof area at a certain distance. This obviously doesn't conform to anything that is current. But this is an older house, oops, excuse me, and it would be considered grandfathered. It would be considered grandfathered. Now the interesting thing about this, and I will tell you this conforms to code back when it was built, okay? But your home inspector, I guarantee you, is going to make a mention of this. Just as he or she is going to make a mention of that guardrail that is a little bit low or not up to today's standards. Why is that? Now here's a question that I often get asked. Well, if it meets code, then why is your home inspector, or why are you as the inspection industry, saying something about that thing? Do y'all want to know why?
Liability.
Well, yeah, there's a potential liability, yes, but that's not really the reason why. The reason is that home inspectors follow a standard of practice. Much like you guys have your car documents and you've got your, you know, escrow documents and so forth and so on, we have documents that sort of tell us what our parameters are, what we're supposed to do. There are 3 criteria that an inspector is supposed to view an item with. So when they're looking at this bag of chips, that inspector is viewing that bag of chips through the criteria or the viewpoint of, is it a safety issue? Is it safe? Is it functioning properly? Or is it in need of repair? Is it nearing or at the end of its useful life? So with those 3 criteria, he or she is looking at this going, that's a potential safety issue. I'm going to make my client aware of it, but it is how the inspector makes the client aware of it. Because if he or she, the home inspector, were to say, oh my God, not acceptable, this is dangerous, you know, run for the hills, I seriously would suggest you find a different inspector, okay? Because that's not what they're there to do. They're there to inform you and your client of potential safety issues, of course, but also to understand that certain things are grandfathered and nothing needs to be done, and not to disrupt your transaction with alarming communications such as that. So that would be considered grandfathered. Now here we have an upgraded kitchen that's without permits. Would this be grandfathered even if it was upgraded, let's say, 30 years ago?
No.
Correct, exactly. It wouldn't be because it doesn't meet the grandfather clause. Basically, the grandfathering is that if it was approved by code at the time it was originally constructed. So obviously this kitchen has been through at least one transformation, if not more. Some overrides, okay? We all know that there are overrides to the permits. So we could have a water heater, let's say, that was installed in 1930. Just as an example. The inspector may suggest that it's a little old, but you know, as an example. In 1930, did we have the earthquake requirements and the earthquake codes that we have today? Okay, now we all know that, the state of California requires that water heaters be seismically strapped, right? Okay, so obviously that's something that goes sort of beyond the grandfathering, right? So there are certain things such as a water heater requiring straps, right? Smoke detectors. There's one. What's this? Broken glass, right? So that impact resistant glass. 18 inches off the floor, right? That's the requirement. Now again, some of these things, for instance, this one, impact resistant glass within 18 inches, is not required at the time of sale. But the earthquake strapping is. The smoke detectors are. Okay, that's important to understand too, because your home inspector may make a mention of this, and the client, the buyer, may request all the glass in the house 18 inches and below be safety glazed or have a film put on it. And of course we have to educate our clients mutually that that is not a time of sale requirement. Okay, the inspector is making a mention of it because it's a potential safety issue, or maybe it was found on a transfer disclosure statement. Occupancy. So what does occupancy mean, basically? It means that the property is being used for what it was intended to be used for. If we look at this picture carefully, probably not too closely, but we can see this appears to be a dental office. Okay? Look beyond the dental chair. What do you see? See a hallway, a couple doors, a closet out there. This is a house. This is a single family dwelling. And someone has decided to run a business. I'm not sure I want to go to that dentist. I don't know. Wow. But anyway, yes, it obviously doesn't. It wasn't zoned for that. It's like having anything like a preschool. We see that. We see houses with preschools all over the place, right? You'd be surprised to find out how many are not zoned for that application. So you would want to check. You would actually want to check. Let's say, here's something for you. Let's say you're buying a house, you and your client are buying a house, you're helping your client buy a house, and it's next to a preschool. Your client is concerned. Not because they don't like children or because of the noise. They're more concerned with just the amount of traffic early in the morning and later afternoon of people coming to pick up and drop off their kids. You could suggest to them to go to permitreport.com and ask them if they can determine if that home is correctly zoned, for the current use as a preschool. So zoning basically is a single word to communicate that the house and the property have to conform. There has to be a certain amount of distance that the house is supposed to be away from the sidewalk or the curb, certain amount of distance that fences and so forth and so on around the house is supposed to be. There's a minimum separation if you have a garage and a house on the same property. Okay, they can't just be right up next to each other. You'd be surprised how many inspections that we go on and we see like the house and the garage roof are actually touching, and there's a gap about that big in between the two on the corner trying to get into the backyard. And we come to find out later that the garage was built later, at a later time, and it wasn't permitted. And that brings me to another thing very, very quickly. One of the reasons why this information is so important to you as brokers, as real estate agents, is because the home inspector doesn't know this information. They may know it in their head, keep in mind, but it's not part of their standard. They are not out there to determine if something is permitted or not. Okay? Please be aware of that. They may see something like that garage with the two roofs touching, and there'll be a clue where that inspector may go, you might want to check permits. I'm not so sure. A 1920s era home, and the entire back has got this beautiful grand master suite with the bathroom, and it's all very highly updated, and it appears to have a bit of a different roof line, a different foundation line. Like the 1920s era home is raised, and this addition in the back is slab. That's a good clue. That's a good clue. Weren't building many slab homes in 1929. So it's a very, very good clue that something there is potentially unpermitted. Okay? So, what are our options? What are our options? Anybody in this room, before they actually saw this slide, did anybody think that there are actually 3 options? If you think about it, right? What are our 3 options? Disclose it. Disclose it. Transparency. Right? Disclose, disclose, disclose. Seller tells buyer that bathroom is unpermitted. We did not pull permits for that bathroom. Buyer says, ooh, okay. Can you get me in touch with your contractor? I'd like to talk to him about it. Okay, good. Oh, that went well. Had a plumber come out, looked at the plumbing. That all seemed fine. Electrician says it's good to go. Good. So what do you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, want to do about that? Oh, I don't want to do anything about it. Excellent. Please sign here. Right? Make sure that you get that documented, that they have chosen to not do anything about it. Okay? Because I'm not, you know, I don't want to stand in front of you today and try to give you the idea that if something is done without a permit, it has been done wrong. Because that's not true. That's not true. If I wasn't on Facebook today, I'd tell you all sorts of things that I've done. But it's not true. All right? I was a general contractor. I was a plumbing contractor. I think I know how to do some work, and I may not pull permits all the time. Doesn't mean that it's done wrong. It means the city hasn't approved it. That's all. Okay? Actually pretty simple. So, you can disclose it. That's option 1. So here was a converted garage to a home theater. I want it. Given the other options that I'm about ready to show you, I think, yeah, no, I'll take that. Yeah, I'll sign that. That's fine. Okay? So that's number 2. Restore it. Okay, that was a converted garage. Your number 2 option is to turn it back into a garage. Not doing that. Right? Okay, you could restore it. So in other words, you could bring it back to its original condition of this converted garage. So obviously that was a garage, and it's been converted into living space. They've added some nice French doors outside and some lighting and so forth and so on. It's no longer a garage. It no longer has an actual garage door that goes in. And real quickly, just so that I can make you guys aware of something, are you all familiar with the new laws and codes with granny flats, guest units?
ADU?
Turning garages into spaces.
Yeah, exactly. Turning garages into living spaces. You know how before you were required to, if you took a garage, turn into a living space, you have to have a carport now and all this. There's lots of stuff came to play. They've changed a lot of things about that. Okay? So please see Sue or me after this event, after this educational seminar, and we'll make sure that we can email you some of these things to get you guys that information. Okay? I figured I'd go ahead and just say that as long as we're talking about garages. Okay, so that's been converted to a living space, and they chose to restore it back to a garage. Okay? Now, our third option, legalize it. Now, this is probably the one that you guys come up with the most, like, because this is the big question, right? This is the big question. You know, we kind of, you know, the idea of the buyer accepting it the way it is. Okay, fine, great, that's your choice. But please, you know, I'm advising you as agents, protect yourselves by ensuring that you get a disclaimer or disclosure stating that that's what they did. What about legalizing it? Is that even possible? I think that's the question that comes up the most. I believe that was sort of your question earlier today. It's like, well, what do you do? How do you legalize it? Can you legalize it? The answer is yes. In most cases, you can. And in most cases, it's not that big of an issue. All right. The first thing that you're going to want to do is you want to meet with the planner. All right. In other words, there is a city planner in the building offices. And you're basically going to meet with the planner, and you are going to draw up what we call as-builts. As-built. Okay? So as it is. So here we've got a garage that we feel that we know, we find out that it's not permitted. Your client wants the garage, right? But they don't want to purchase the house without knowing that they can have it permitted, so forth and so on. All right? The answer is have them get a hold of permitreport.com, have them call me, it's fine. I can steer them through the process. And what they're going to want is they're going to want the garage sort of drawn up the way it was built. All right? And then you're going to meet with the planner. Then, after you've done that, you're actually going to have to provide detailed plans of this thing. All right? So as best you can, the architect is going to come out there and he's going to draw up, you know, the actual the square footage of everything, and the distances and the setbacks and all of that stuff, making sure that it meets all the zoning and the occupancy laws, so forth and so on. There will be fees and there will be a fine.
Wow.
Wow. Okay? It's not terrible. I can tell you, I mean, obviously, if you're trying to permit, you know, the Empire State Building, which I don't know, I'm sure it has a permit, but let's say it didn't. Of course, that's going to be a little bit more expensive. But it really depends. Obviously, if you're trying to permit an entire house that's been built without permits, it's going to cost a few bucks. And you're probably never going to run into that scenario. Okay? But let's say you're trying to permit a converted garage that's now a theater. Let's say you're trying to convert or permit a attached or a detached garage, right? A parking area, okay? These are all relatively easy. In the cases that I've seen, the worst case scenario I've actually seen was a kitchen that was remodeled without permits. It was a beautiful kitchen. It was done very nicely, okay? During the process of this, the city inspector did come out and they asked for the wall that was in the dining room, right, that was behind the sink and the stove of this kitchen. They said, please take out that drywall. And it was a good section of drywall. I mean, it was, 15 feet by, 8 feet tall. They opened up that wall, and the city inspector saw the majority or much of the electrical, the plumbing, the framing. So that city inspector got a really good idea of the contractor's workmanship. That's a huge thing with many inspectors. If your work looks like you're a professional and you know what you're doing, they are more than likely going to say, okay. Yes, sir.
What about photographs that were taken during the remodel?
Absolutely. Photographs are always very, very helpful, of course. And that's a great thing to suggest, that if anyone were to do some remodeling without pulling a permit, I would suggest the photographs. Yeah, and in detail, too. Especially if there's like seismic, retrofitting that you're doing with particular clamps and hold downs and a bolting pattern, detail of those clamps and so forth and so on that you did use, so that if you do have to permit it later, you've got all of that stuff, and maybe they won't open the walls when you show them where that hold down tie is or something. So the cost there was a fine, a nominal fine for not having the permit in the first place, right? The fee for the permit, right? And then, of course, the repair to drywall and paint. So it ended up being less than a couple $1,000s. So that's not terrible for a $25,000 or $30,000 kitchen remodel, right? Now, originally when that permit was built, or when that kitchen was built or remodeled, that permit probably would have been about $600, maybe $800. So yes, it's going to be a bit higher, maybe double. But that's not the case in all cases. But again, that's what I've seen. What to do? So again, we're going to talk about nothing, restore it, or legalize it. And we're going to have a little fun with some pictures. So these are common things that we see on inspections, right? That's not even the worst of it. This is a common issue that we see. Somebody added an air conditioning unit. This is the compressor or the condenser. And they decided to put it on the roof. And obviously this is a cement tile, if you will, type of roof. And, you know, these things need to be level for them to operate properly, so they couldn't pitch it with the roof. So they've installed 2, it looks like, 4x4 posts right there. I don't even see that they're held down. You know, there's a lot of things wrong with this. Okay, so our category here is what to do. Nothing, restore it, or legalize it.
Or legalize it.
Right, but if you restored it, right? In other words, a proper platform would need to be built here. The flashings would have to be tied down, and roof would have to get involved. Air conditioning guy have to get involved. So you could restore it, but keep in mind, restoring something that was never there, you can't really restore it. So you only have 2 options in this case.
Legalize it.
Legalize it, or get rid of it, or you could accept it. Right? So yeah, obviously the simple thing, or the simpler thing, would be to legalize it. Or possibly even simpler, to find a location somewhere in the side yard or the backyard where that air conditioning unit could go onto a pad. It may be less expensive, right? Because this, as simple as it may look, roofer and an air conditioner contractor are going to need to coordinate their efforts to get that done properly. It's a little foggy on that screen. Yeah, that's a set of stairs.
Just a one stair.
that leads into a wall. Oh, yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah. So the stairwell, the stairs used to come up
Give
here.
someone an illusion.
Right, the stairs used to come up here. That's not an illusion, that's real. And somebody decided to, you know, close in the stairs. I think they put the stairs in a different place. But, you know, I'm not sure why they didn't decide to at least make a closet out of that or something, you know. So again, restore it, legalize it, or what was our third option again? Nothing, restore it, legalize it. Do nothing, restore it, or legalize it. A, you can't legalize it, okay? Because right there, they don't really even care. To be honest with you, there's nothing going on there that they're going to say, they're going to scratch their head and go, I don't have a permit for that. Because there isn't any. It's drywall. So it's kind of up to the client, like, you know, if it bothers you, then I guess we could ask them to put the stairs back in, or at that point, they'll probably go, you know what, I'm tearing it down, I'm remodeling anyway, I'll just accept it as it is. Restore it, legalize it, or do nothing. Yeah, this would probably be one of those cases where you do nothing, you know. And again, going back to that disclosure, you know, with your client, please let them know that you would like them to know that that doesn't meet current safety standards, current codes, whatnot. It's been grandfathered, it's totally fine. And whatever documents the car has for you, ensure that they know that they are buying something that has been grandfathered. That's important. I don't know if car has that document. I've never seen it. But it's probably important to at least have that communication with your client. Now here's an interesting one. This particular guardrail system was actually installed without permits at a time when the ladder type system was not allowed. There was a period of time, a while back, where the ladder type system was no longer allowed. It is allowed now. It's come back to being allowed, okay? But when you think about it, who has children in here? Okay.
Yeah.
Who was a child in here? Would you have? No, not you. You're smarter than the rest of us. Absolutely, I would have climbed that thing all day long, just had a field day. That was my jungle gym right at home, right? Would have loved that. But it's true. I mean, we're on inspections, we see these things, and we actually see the children going out on the balconies and having fun climbing up these things. And it's wonderful, it's great, but potential issue, safety issue. So, of course, when it was built at a time when it was not allowed. Okay, so that means there's no permit for it. So what would you advise your client, or what would you do if you were buying this? Legalize it? Yeah, or nothing. There was somebody said nothing. You could do nothing and zip tie some screen on there if you had a kid so they couldn't, you know, grab it or something like that. But yeah, of course.
I wouldn't even
That's a big restoration. I think we're not restoring that one. So what do we have here? We've got a single-car garage with a single-family dwelling, a very small little hangout, a little hideout, right? The club. All right. There's so many things wrong with this. I can't begin to tell you. First of all, would anybody care to take a stab in the dark on probably the most likely biggest issue with this particular structure? Yes?
The weight?
You got it. Excellent. Wonderful. What do we have for her? Nothing. We have a cookie. The weight. The weight. The garage was designed as a garage. It wasn't designed to have a structure on top of it. It's not a two-story structure. Now, many people might think that, oh, well, all you have to do is get in here and then, you know, double up your ceiling joists, your roof trusses, and so forth and so on, you'll be okay. Is the foundation of a structure the same on a single story as it is a two-story?
No.
No, exactly. There's more weight on top. That means there needs to be more foundation to hold the weight. All right? So, even if somebody got in there and put a bunch of wood in there and, you know, tied it in the whole bit, it still may not meet what it needs to meet to have that structure on top. Now that is, again, the most significant thing of this item. But when we look at it, there's all sorts of things. Okay, obviously everybody's seen the broken guardrail over here, the handrail, right? Those stairs, I'm pretty sure you're looking straight up when you're trying to walk up them. They're like completely hazardous. How about these guardrails? And we were talking about kids that, you know, climbing as a ladder. Those aren't even there for them to climb. They're going to walk right through. Okay, here's something interesting when you look close. You see the roof posts? The roof posts are coming right down to the roof of the garage. They're not even bracketed. They're sitting on the roofing material of the garage. So, well, you notice we took a picture from the roof of the house. We didn't go over there. Yeah, we didn't want to get too close. All right, so again, we have those three options, three choices. If you were buying this property, what would you do?
Restore it.
I think there's a third option.
Tear it down.
Tear it down.
Remove it.
Exactly. Tear it down. Get rid of it. Okay, here's something we see all the time. You guys may have heard this. This is called an S-trap. Okay, so this is a trap. You'll see them underneath every single sink. It's called a P-trap, a plumbing trap. And what this does is it always stays full of water to that point. You see that? Every time you run the sink and it drains here, it fills this little U-shaped pipe up and it stays full. So that creates a gasket, a seal, so that sewer gases can't come out of your sink as you're washing your lettuce. But this is a trap arm. The outlet of this trap is supposed to meet this trap arm on the same plane. So what we've done here is we've created a siphon. So as that water comes down here, up and around, it starts pulling. So it'll always leave a little gap to allow those sewer gases to come by. That's called an S-trap. Very common thing we find. It's extraordinarily simple to fix. So I'm pretty sure we know what we would do with this one. This one is a little bit different. What we're looking at here is the bottom of a tub. We're inside a crawl space underneath the house. We go to those places that you don't want to. Now, what this is called a floor joist. Okay, this is holding up the tub. You know how heavy a tub is when it's full of water? I mean, how much does a gallon of water weigh? 8.3 pounds per gallon. You got 40 gallons in a tub. That's pretty heavy. So we've notched out this joist, not only on the top and the bottom, which is where you can't notch a joist. Most certainly on the bottom. Weight is pushing down. When you have something that's notched at the bottom with weight pushing down, what happens to that thing? It spreads. It opens up. Right? Up here, what happens? It allows it to close. So now we've basically doubled up in the safety issue because we're making the bottom easier to spread because the top is closing. It's like we've created this little hinge So that's number one, you can't do that. Number two, I can't recall, I was a plumbing contractor for 20 years. I know the codes pretty well in plumbing, and I'm not sure how telephone wire got approved, this must be past my time, to actually be supportive of plumbing pipes, or possibly it's the plumbing pipes holding the floor joist. I'm not sure what's going on here. But either way, it definitely needs to be fixed. Everybody needs a tub. So this would be a matter of repairing it, restoring it to its original, and then, you know, it obviously is permitted because it's a tub and it's plumbing. So it will fall under the grandfather clause of the original permit, but then to repair that, just sort of restore it back to its original condition, structurally, most certainly. Here's one you guys have seen all the time, right? There's an electrical outlet sitting right next to a kitchen sink. Now, we all heard of GFCIs, right? Ground fault circuit interrupters. They're required anywhere that there's an electrical outlet within a certain distance of a water source. This is a little close. So not only would I suggest a ground fault circuit interrupt be installed, but I would also suggest to move this outlet about 4 feet that way. 3 or 4 feet, you know, get it past the sink line, right? Just to make it safer. And then, you know, it's a simple fix because you literally would just blank that off. Just blank it off. Okay, so here is a converted one. No, excuse me, this wasn't converted. This was actually an addition. Small addition, done without permits. And what would we do here?
Correct.
Cute little house. What would you want to do with it? Legalize it, right? Why not? Why not? Sure, it looks, just look at that. Does that look proper?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's just like a house.
Yeah, beautiful. It's proper, right? That's what the city inspector is going to see also. Well, that looks proper. So I was going back, you know, what I said earlier, that they look for that craftsmanship, that professionalism. They kind of know somebody knew what they were doing when they did that. They kind of know somebody didn't know what they were doing when they did that. You know, just the visual clue, it's very easy to see. All right, so yes, absolutely, legalize it. Go through the process, doing the as-built drawing, pay the fines, pay the fees, get it permitted, have it inspected, enjoy it. This one was at the beginning of our slideshow, but it's a different picture, sort of pictating the same condition. Here we have a water heater in the garage and a vent next to an openable window. Now, as you can see, this is a new house. How is this even possible? Have you ever been on a new house and your home inspector says blah, blah, blah? And you go, well, that's impossible. It was inspected by the city. Yeah. What does that really mean? It doesn't mean the city missed it, per se, right? Here's what happens all the time. Just an example. Like I said, I was a plumbing contractor. I got to know city inspectors so well. They got to know me pretty well. They're very busy people. They would drive by my job and yell at me out the window, "Bring me your card." "Thank you, Chris. Have a nice day." They didn't even get out of their car. Now, that's not necessarily wrong. They get to know your work. They get to know what you do. Okay, it goes back to that craftsmanship, if you will. If you've created a personal relationship with them, they don't, oftentimes they may not have a problem just signing you off, especially if it's a simple repipe or something like that. So it's quite possible that the building department came through here, looked at 100 different things that they have to look at, and either neglected, forgot, or just, you know, accidentally passed up the water heater, or more than likely, the water heater wasn't installed yet. It's very, very common that something is not done yet, right? How many homes have we bought where the kitchen is not quite done? That dishwasher's not in place. You know, maybe the water heater hasn't been hooked up yet. The gas meter's not there yet. But we're in a transaction with escrow. So it can happen all the time. So in this case, brand new house, what do? This one's easy.
Raise it up.
Right, fix it, get it permitted, right? And you know why this one's so easy? It's still under warranty by the contractor. It literally is telling the contractor, "Hey, sorry, pal, this is funking, you know, inspection, you got to fix it." This is an addition. two-story addition next to a one-story house. This is in Pasadena. That is a working fireplace.
Scary.
Okay?
It's good at burning.
Yeah, that one is going to be expensive. I will tell you that. To get a permit to do this, number one, this chimney, all right, the city would never allow a new chimney to be installed on top of that old chimney. Exactly, you got it, sir. You got it. You got to nix it. It's got to come out. And that's unfortunate because that is an expensive item. Personally, I would just cap it, right? Safe it off so that it can't be used. Safe it off so that water intrusion can't occur, right? And then enjoy it from the inside without any fire. Put a fishbowl in there. I don't know. Do something different with it. So obviously handling those issues equals happy clients. So the permit process is not all that scary, especially when you have that information, when you have I mean, I can help your client walk you through it. It's actually a pretty simple thing when you think about those three things, like what should we do, what could we do? Okay, good. Let's get rolling on that process. Does anybody have any questions at this time? Yes, sir.
I don't do a lot of business in Pasadena, but I know they have an occupancy permit required on new home sales where they want to come out and inspect the house maybe before the new buyer moves in.
Yeah.
Can you address issues that may or may not conform to code and how that affects our ability to close and get a buyer into the house?
God, I wish you wouldn't have asked me that. You know, that occupancy inspection in the city of Pasadena, everybody familiar with it?
Yes.
It's quite problematic.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's unfortunate, but it is problematic. Unfortunately, I can't really speak intelligently on that because they're doing a different inspection. They are looking at things from safety only and basically requesting that those items do be upgraded. Our standard would be different. In other words, our standard would be what would need to be done in escrow prior to that home transferring. In other words, GFCIs maybe, the earthquake strapping, smoke detectors, things like that. But I believe that they're, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that they're going through and marking out and commenting on foundation issues, structural issues that they want repaired. This is sort of what Burbank did a while back ago with their wood roofs. They basically implemented that all wood roofs had to come off by a certain time. Pasadena is kind of doing the same thing where they want all their structures upgraded by a certain time. And unfortunately, they don't, from what I know, they don't have the staff or the time to really do a proper job of it. And I know that it's been in like many city council meetings, like what is going on here? So unfortunately, I can't really, I probably know about as much as you do about it. I really can't help you too much on it. So I apologize. So going back to home inspections, does anybody have any questions? All right, terrific, guys. Well, listen, thanks a lot for having us here. So you're going to do the drawing?
Yes.
Good, we're going to do the drawing and see who wins.
We're going to do a drawing, but I need to get more cards from the...
Who has not put in a card?
I got a question. Regarding the zoning report that you mentioned earlier.
And then put in your card, and I'll email you some of the informative flyers, like the ADU flyer that we talked about earlier.
See if that preschool is in the right zone.
Yes,
What's the next
I
step?
can email you.
If it isn't, then should they just follow the plan again? If they really want that house, if that's what we pay. If not, I mean, we just have it.
Yeah, again, they probably have those three options.
Yeah.
With another option, they could walk away. They could accept the plan. They could try to do whatever they can to get it changed. I can tell you, in that case, you know, they're going to have some unfriendly neighbors, you know, if they really do cause a ruckus. So they may choose to kind of move out of the neighborhood. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's still, you got to leave it up to them as far as what they
Anybody else? Want to put a card in?
They may not. That's the thing. It's the same as all the stuff.
Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate it. Hope you got a lot out of it.
I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, they're so busy that oftentimes they don't even stop and they just.
Yeah, I'm going to email
The city used to drive around on
everybody.
Sunday, looking for, you know, people working. They don't even do that anymore. They just don't have the budget.
I can email or you, or you want pen? Yes. Okay. Yes, and who didn't get a handout? You got handouts here? Anybody else want a handout? Chris, you got any more cards? Anybody else want a handout?
$500, and it is,
Thank you.
there is a square,
All right, I'm gonna pick a name.
20%, I think.
You look real good.
You still have to pull permits.
Alrighty.
Basically, the number, like if you
Chelsea,
want to grant
Shane.
it at a time, let's say you're doing
There you
it.
go.
A little aesthetic. If it's over $500, a permit.
We got a bunch of pens and handouts here. Everybody.
Most of these.
More
But every
things
city
out
has
there.
different zoning and different particular rules. You know, obviously.
Everybody got pens.
The fact of the matter is, yeah, it's any upgrade, remodel, alteration, repair. If you were to, yes, exactly. If you were to fully, fully be legal with the permit, if you were to decide to refinish your hardwood finish, and it was $1,200, you,
I'm gonna email it to you.
by their rules, are required to post. It's just, it's a way for them to increase, it's revenue. It's a way for them to make money.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Here it is, right here. But also on our website, you can find several articles that we've written on barakainspect.com on our resources page. You'll find that information on the auxiliary dwelling unit on our website. Oh, right here. Yeah.
And yeah.
What's his name, John?
Okay, great. My name is Sue. Right. Got any more cards, Chris?
Yes, absolutely.
What do you guys use for inspection? Just a regular